Hello, this is What I've Been Thinking with Marcus Cage, and I'm your host, Marcus Cage. As you can see, I have my Chiefs hat on, and so I have been relishing in our Super Bowl victory, so I've kind of taken a little bit of a, vacation, a little hiatus from a lot of the things that have been going on, but there has been a lot that's been going on, especially what gone on with the Iowa caucuses. I won't go really in depth into what happened with the Iowa caucuses because it's just such a hot mess. But what I will do is I will try to sum this up really quickly for you, give you the highlights, because later on I plan on doing a deeper video that will tie in a lot of the shenanigans that went on with the Iowa caucuses. So that's one of the things I want to talk about. The most recent New Hampshire debate. Not much to really go over that because with Iowa caucuses and all that scramble going on, it's kind of all murky. And then we have the New Hampshire primaries coming on Tuesday. So these couple of things, some of the predictions that I have in mind are some of the things which I'm going to talk about in this video. Those of you watching now, please click the like button, please subscribe, and please click the bell. I want to get that out there right off the bat. I know some of you guys might watch my videos and might enjoy the video, and it's not that you wouldn't subscribe or like it, it's just it doesn't occur to a lot of us if we're not thinking about it, or if it rolls into another video, we might have forgot to do it. So I just want to make that reminder. If you enjoy the videos, please like, share, and subscribe. With further ado, I guess we'll get on to the show. Joining me. The first topic that we're going to talk about is the Iowa caucuses. Before the Iowa caucuses, I actually made a couple of predictions. Though my numbers might not have been exactly on key, if you check back to the Des Moines Register poll, which was released right before the caucuses, which is normally one of the most relied upon gold standard polls, which has predicted nominees for the Republican and Democratic Party, easily going back 7 to 10 elections. And they've been very correct in a lot of the way that they polled. So the first sign that being scrapped was a little bit strange. And then when I found out the reasoning why it was scrapped, that was even more strange. Apparently, one of the pollers supposedly mispronounced Pete Buttigieg's last name, and that's why it was scrapped out. So over 400 to 500 people polled in this poll. This one complaint had the most reliable gold standard poll pulled all of a sudden. That's the first thing, and you could say, you know what, hey, things happen, I don't see any problem with that. That's fine. But keep that in mind when I keep bringing up more and more issues with this. One of the next things which I found out is that the company which founded the app, for one, their name is Shadow. That's already a bad thing. But they're tied in with a lot of the major DNC donors. More specifically, Hillary Clinton Foundation and a lot of her former staffers. It's also pretty interesting that Pete Buttigieg has people from the, Alphabet, which is the parent company, to Shadow, which created the app, and all up and down the works, which are actually working actively right now in Mayor Pete's campaign. Not to mention that he had already he's already paying money to this app developer for supposedly doing polling and calling and some kind of other data. To me, I would think, okay, poll gets pulled, has something to do with Mayor Pete. He has money funded with an organization which has a big problem. That there's two problems that you run into back to back. Then the very next thing, which I noticed also is, if you go back to a meeting that happened roughly about a year ago, this meeting had a lot of the major party establishments there, figures there. Hillary Clinton was there, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, at that time Mayor Pete Buttigieg, and a handful of other people, including, I believe, at least one or two other presidential candidates. And the name of that meeting was called How to Stop Bernie Sanders. So if you have a meeting a year out in advance, planning and getting together to do certain things, that just has always been a red flag for me and always bothered me. So I kept that in mind to look for if I see any other things that start to stick out or look strange or look odd. And these first couple of things I saw with Mayor Pete, that's an issue. Also, another person was at that meeting, Troy Price, I believe his name, the Iowa Democratic chair, who's basically over this whole fiasco on the state level, also has ties to the Buttigieg campaign. So the person running the poll has ties to them, and he was also at that very same Stop Bernie meeting with Pete there also. So I've named that they're all at a meeting together. There's money tied up, interest tied up. They're all part of the anti-Bernie coalition in a sense. You have a poll, which is one of the most reliable predicted poll, which Bernie comes in first and Pete comes in third, gets scrapped. And then some other interesting things I start noticing. There were 3 coin flips. You can be lucky enough to have all 3 coin flips go your way. That's very, 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 very possible. But one of the interesting things I learned about one of the coin flips is that coin flip did not have to happen and wasn't supposed to happen. I don't have the exact numbers in my head right now, but if you look up Fiorella with the Combo Couch, shout out to them, and the Mi Casa Su Casa network, they have really done a lot of work being involved in the Iowa caucuses and paying attention. So they were on the ground in that precinct where Bernie was apparently up somewhere around 1,000 votes. Pete had somewhere around 600 something votes. That should be an automatic winner and decided and done with. That's not what happened in that case. What happened in that case was a coin flip happened and Mayor Pete won that coin flip. That got overshadowed, I feel, in a lot of ways because of the other coin flip, which the whole way it was handled was completely weird and strange. And if it would have been me standing there watching that coin flip or being involved in that coin flip, I would have raised all kinds of hell because there's no way I would allow that to stand. The part where he's manually playing around with the coin, and I don't know if he's feeling it, I don't know what he's doing, but the fact that you can't tell what he's doing is a problem enough. And I'll make sure to add that video in later on and probably cover it over what I'm talking about right now so you guys can see what I'm talking about with that coin flip. Right there, I just gave you 2 coin flips out of 3 which had issues with them. The third one, as far as I know, I hadn't heard anything. But another issue which you notice is the precincts which Bernie Sanders did well in, in the previous run in 2015, those same caucus sites, which he did well in, all of a sudden, the constituents of those districts, their vote wasn't worth one vote anymore. Their vote became roughly 3/5 of a vote, because what they started doing was those inner city areas, and predominantly people of color, those votes were marginalized. And it wasn't the Republicans who decided gerrymander or play some games or disenfranchise voters. It was the Iowa Democratic Party who decided to weight other voters over voters of color, to biasly go against Bernie Sanders. One of the other things which Mayor Pete brought up that he complained about was the satellite districts, which those went, from what I heard, 95 to 98 to 100% for Bernie Sanders in some cases. So if all these things are just murky indiscretions, not to mention the fact that they basically stopped the counting, then recounted, and then there were different county supervisors on the lower precinct levels that brought up discrepancies, issues with the counts that were being released. So, I mean, that the Iowa caucuses, it's almost like you can't take it serious at all. I mean, well, you can't take it serious. I feel anybody who does take it serious is kind of biased, or you're just not paying nearly enough attention, and you have far, far, far too much trust in the legacy media, cable news, and a lot of those people. I'm not telling you you shouldn't consume them, because there's always information which they're putting out which is pertinent. But you need to start, please, taking more of a skeptical eye and having a little bit more questions. If something repeatedly looks off over and over and over, the trend or tendency, which I've seen in the media, is they choose to, oh, well, that's just kind of strange. And it's never okay, this was strange, that was strange, this was strange, this was strange, this was strange. We have 10 things in a row. When are you going to say that something is fishy, that something is wrong? No, they'll just keep saying, well, I don't know, something seems weird, and give everything the benefit of the doubt. And by doing that, they have conditioned a lot of the audience, a lot of us out here, to just buy the fact of, maybe it's nothing there. We need to be a lot more skeptical people. The amount of information which I've researched with this whole DNC and the way the elections process has been going and the funding, there are a lot of things which I'm going to lay out in a later video to kind of explain this. In this Iowa caucus, some of the funding stuff I will break down further in that video. The whole point of the Iowa caucus is to just get the media bump. It's not about even the delegates. The state allocation tried to say some crazy 12 or 12 for Bernie and 14 for Buttigieg or whatever. When it comes down to it, they only have 11. It'll be split 11 and 11, being a tie on the national. They're just using this state delegate math thing to frame a narrative and push things out longer, because that's the whole point of Iowa. Even if you win all the delegates of Iowa, Iowa's still like 2% of what you need to get the amount of delegates to become the nominee. The only point of Iowa is to get the media bump out of being the winner. And if you have it as a tie, basically, and even those numbers are murky, and you only screen one person won, what does that tell you? I mean, to me, it's pretty obvious, but to those of you out there who don't believe that there's a media bias against Bernie Sanders, then, I digress. I don't think I will be able to convince you if you don't buy that at this point. Okay. Next subject that we want to talk about, since Iowa caucuses is pretty much a mess and a disaster, and it's pretty much a waste, which hopefully they're not the first in the nation status. I would prefer to see it go to a state like Michigan, preferably, because you have a much more representative population sample, larger size, and I feel like there's more issues that you have to deal with in a state like Michigan than Iowa. But that's where I stand on that issue, since I know that's going to be the discussion coming up next year when they focus on, or not next year, but the next primary election cycles when they're in Iowa. But New Hampshire, the New Hampshire debate, since it all came up like almost back to back to back, the one people that I guess I would focus on is I feel like Bernie was pretty consistent. So I felt what he did in the debate was what I expect of Bernie. So I didn't feel he had to do anything much different or did anything much differently. He did call out Pete Buttigieg directly about his billionaires. He missed an opportunity to punch Biden. I felt when they start talking about his record and they brought up Nina Turner saying that he wasn't a friend to the black community, I feel that was a missed opportunity. I get it. Joe Biden is Bernie Sanders' friend, but my question, which I even tweeted this out to Bernie directly, I am a huge Bernie supporter, and I trust, I guess, the way he's trying to go about his path to win. But at some point, I have to wonder, is it more important to not hurt your friends' feelings than to actually win and change the lives of millions of Americans and millions of people around the world? I mean, at some point, you have to weigh out what's more important, Joe's hurt feelings or if we get health care. I'm in the camp of screw Joe's feelings. We need health care. Joe can go and get therapy or whatever, and you guys could go bowling together and have beers and work it out later. I don't care about Joe's feelings, and none of us should, as far as who we want to lead this nation. It's not about a personal tie or who do you think is nice, or just like even some of the nonsense I hear with Mayor Pete, which I guess I'll just go and roll on to Mayor Pete right now. A lot of people say, oh, Mayor Pete, he speaks so well and this and that. And so what? So what? Speaking well is not going to help raise wages for most people. Speaking well is not going to help student loan debt. Speaking well is not going to do anything as far as helping protect people's Social Security and a lot of these other issues. So, I mean, if your reason for supporting a candidate is because they speak well or they're eloquent, I mean, you have to come to grips with the fact that you're not being serious about how you pick the leader of the free world. This is not a buddy session and he's gonna go kumbaya and you want a president that every time you turn on the TV, you can smile and say, you know what? He makes me feel special inside. That's not what this is about. This is about actual issues for actual real people. If your biggest concern in your president is how good they make you feel on the inside, and that's more important what they're doing financially or through foreign policy or fixing the roads and bridges and all that, you have some issues with the way you're perceiving the world. And I feel like you really need to just have some conversations with some people and find out what it's like in other people's shoes, because if that's your biggest issue, then I feel that you're not going through a lot of the struggles that many people are having and why there's so much passion and energy besides behind a Bernie Sanders or even a Tulsi Gabbard or some of these other different candidates, Elizabeth Warren. You have passion behind these candidates because whether I agree with them completely or trust them at all, the difference between them and Pete is they're actually offering something. And Pete is offering nothing but platitude, salads and feel goods and happy joys and rainbows. That doesn't pay the bills. That doesn't make a difference. So I'd like for you guys to pay more attention to this man's record. Any of you guys who support Pete, I'm letting you know right off the bat, you don't have to like it. You don't have to like me. I'm not a fan of Pete. Anytime you're the man who's who's known for firing the first black police chief, and you can't even give a legitimate reasoning to why you did this. And all the outside indications look like you took pressure from people who you took money from, and that's why that happened. And then you went on to fire the first black fire chief and a bunch of other people. Now, I don't know if you're racist. I don't know if Mayor Pete is racist to those who support him, but his policies and his decisions have been negative towards the black community. You look at his crime statistics, you look at arrest records, you look at how things have went under the time of Mayor Pete, and it hasn't been this nice and rosy story which he likes to put out on the campaign trail. I mean, if you look up Jordan Chariton, a status quo, he's had numerous interviews on the ground, talking to actual people in South Bend. I'm talking about from elected officials to pastors to activists who help with the homeless. I'm talking about everybody. These are not people who are just on there and they're some secret Bloomberg or Tom Steyer person to try to axe Mayor Pete. These are people who live there in that community, who have to deal with the consequences and ramifications of his decisions. I would feel that if the only thing that he has been the actual leader of this small town of 100,000 people, if there's a lot of unrest and unhappiness that is going on in this city, and he wants to elevate onto a next position, the only thing we can judge him on is what has gone on in the last place, which he managed. And if you actually go and talk to real people in that area, you don't get the same rosy picture which you hear from Mayor Pete on the campaign trail, or that you hear from a lot of his supporters. Also, the fact that when he changes, you often notice that there was donations that happened right before a Mayor Pete change. He talked about being for Medicare for all, and now he's running for president. Even as early as this year, he was still supporting it, and he's backed away from it. I mean, he even talked about Bernie Sanders as being the type of politician we need because he's gotten things done under Republicans when Democrats didn't have power. And now all of a sudden, oh, Bernie's way is too extreme. We can't get any of that done. People, I implore you and beg you. You can look all these things up. You can follow this information and just know this man is a fraud. Don't waste your time on him. Some of the other people on the stage, I might have different views, but he's the only one that I feel is an outright fraud who is just trying to move his way up for power. Next candidate for the debate, Warren. Warren, even though the results of the Iowa caucus were extremely bizarre, to say the least, Warren didn't fare very well there. And that might be a warning sign. New Hampshire, she should do well. She should do respectable. I'm saying that she should be in the top 3. If she's not in the top 3, then it's an absolute failure because she's from the neighboring states. She's basically, she's a New Englander, basically. And New Hampshire falls into New England. So if you can't win in your own backyard, it doesn't spell good for you, especially with South Carolina coming right behind, and she's not doing very well in the polls there either. I felt that her attack that she launched against Bernie, as far as I guess insinuating that he uses PACs or something like that, it's another thing that I feel like it was a big groan for me, because I would like to see Elizabeth Warren be able to put some of this fighting and bickering between Bernie in the past and let us just forget about it and get on. And some of us who feel like Warren was lying be able to start to gain some kind of sense of trust and confidence with her again in case we have to align in some kind of way. But when you start out with accusing Bernie Sanders of somehow violating his pledge and that he's somehow really bought off or something, like he's really playing by sneaky rules, and you and Klobuchar, which Klobuchar takes money from all kind of PACs and millionaires. So that didn't even make sense when she said it, trying to, I don't know, maybe that's just trying to pick a woman kind of thing. But there's my point. If I gotta go wishy-washy and it doesn't make sense, you call out this person who didn't do it, but you defend this person who's doing it, and then say, oh, it's just me and this person. At a certain time, I have to start wondering, now Warren, she has things that I like about her policies, but I cannot trust Warren. Warren has just come across as almost as disingenuous as Pete is. Pete is just a flat out liar, and I don't feel he would get anything done. I feel he will march to his billionaire puppet masters. Warren, I just don't feel. Warren is this. Let's see which way the winds are blowing. And I don't want any politicians like that. I'm tired of seeing that. That was Bill Clinton's way of doing things. That was Hillary Clinton's way of doing things. That's Obama's way of doing things. I don't want those kind of politicians anymore. I want somebody who's going to be firm on their convictions. Convictions are what's important, because if you don't have convictions, then you're not going to keep fighting. If you just walk in there and you're, I'll just try to do my best and I'll just try to get my best deal, then things will continue to run on the way they're running. And the problems in this nation will continue to get worse. Let's see, Yang, I felt he started off looking like he was going to have a good night. He returns back to the stage. He had good energy. But Yang took a pretty nasty gut punch from Tom Steyer, in my opinion, and I don't feel like he answered it properly from then on. When she asked him about, I guess it was a question having to do with minority communities, and he started going through his UBI freedom dividend spill, and Tom Steyer just jumped straight out there and was like, "Yo, you're wrong, man. Reparations is the deal. If you look at black wealth compared to white wealth, or just minority wealth compared to white wealth in general, I mean, it's pennies on the dollar, and it's like 17 cents on the dollar for Latinos, and it's literally like 3 or 4 cents on the dollar for African American community, for the Asian community, depending on which I guess nationality of Asian community you come from. It varies. Some are a little bit higher, and some are a lot lower, but these numbers with UBI, like Yang wants to do it. The problem with UBI is it doesn't close that wealth gap. And in a place like California, where I currently live, there's no laws on the landlord to raise the rent. There's no laws on any utility companies and it just not go up on you. So my biggest thing, which I worry with Yang's UBI, is it would start out fine and it would help some people in the beginning. The problem is, I believe the inflation of everything around would go up to a point where you would literally need his UBI just to get by because of the inflation cost. I mean, I see no reason why gas prices in California would not go up if they know, okay, we have 40 million people now who have an extra $1,000 in their pocket. I just don't, I think that it could be helpful. It could be a good first step on some things, but also the way that he wants to pay for it and do it through a VAT tax is regressive. The way he has it set up, if you are the lower income and you are receiving different types of assistance, you're going to have to choose. Whereas that other person who is doing fine, where maybe they're making good money and they're able to pay all their bills, that's just money in the pocket for them. And I don't like a program where it doesn't benefit the people who need it the most. It benefits everybody else more than the people who actually need it. And that's an issue for me. In this country, the people who we really need to be focusing on are the people who need the most help, instead of just focusing on the people who are a couple of steps above them. I don't mean above them as in better than them, but I just mean as in their current status or status at the time. Let's see, which other candidate? We'll go on to Amy Klobuchar. Completely boring. In my opinion, I don't get what the appeal is to her, besides the fact that she's a senator. She's not completely horrible. She's a woman. I don't know. Did I already say that? Maybe that's why people are supporting her. I don't know. I don't get the whole Amy Klobuchar thing. Plus, I have a problem with anybody who was a prosecutor and you had the choice to go into law enforcement, or a form of law enforcement, and help people. Instead, you said, I'm going to go after the penalization side. I want to go after the punisher. Now, granted, I get it. There are people who maybe they were raped, or people are murdered, and you felt some justification to go after that. But if your job is always normally going after people, I feel if you do that enough time, it starts to, I guess, give you, make you start to lose a little bit of empathy in a way. I mean, I've dated people in the medical field, and it's jarring sometimes to hear them chit chat with some of their coworkers because they're around people who complain about pain. Some people are faking it, some people aren't, and how numb and cold they can get to those people complaining because they're used to people saying, well, I'm really, really sick. I'm really, really hurt. Well, it's the same thing with law enforcement. If you go into it with the mindset of trying to be the Cape Crusader and go after evildoers, when you're hearing people say, I'm innocent, or no, I didn't do that, at a certain point, you just start to turn a blind eye and you turn off your ears to listening to those people. And that was my problem with Kamala Harris. That was my problem with Klobuchar. Anybody who has a background as a district attorney, I'm going to look back into your record, and I guarantee you, I'm probably not going to like what I see. So at least I'm consistent in where I stand there. Joe Biden. I think I spoke a little bit about Joe Biden already, but I'll speak a little bit more about Joe Biden. The Iowa caucuses, I felt the biggest news, besides whether Bernie won or whether Pete won, was the fact that Joe Biden looked horrendous. That was the big news, because going into this race, he was predicted to not do extremely well, but nobody was predicting him to do as bad as he did, that he almost got passed by Amy Klobuchar. I have said for a long time, just like many in independent media, we have been saying that Biden is a very, very weak front runner. What we did not, what we didn't expect is that the polls were that much off, that the polls were skewed towards Biden in a way. I mean, I saw numerous polls, throughout the whole course of this election cycle. And the biggest trend that I saw in most of the polling is that they were massively oversampling older voters. I mean, most of the polling for instance, you look at a poll and 2/3 of the respondents were over 55. I mean, in Iowa right now, what's proven and what's happened in 2018 is millennials are the largest voting bloc. So if they're the largest voting bloc and they've been the most politically active and you're not polling them, then it makes sense that your numbers are going to be massively off, like we ran into with this Iowa caucus. And I believe that it's possible we might see more of this with the fact that New Hampshire is an open primary, so that means independents and Republicans can vote. As far as the candidates who are in the top 4 positions, Bernie by far has the most outreach support to independents and Republicans. So I believe that they're underestimating his numbers slightly in this one also. With Biden came right out in this one. And he admitted that Iowa was a punch to the gut. And he basically admitted, I'm waving the white flag. This one's not going to do well for me either. With Biden, somewhere a little north of 8 million on-hand campaign cash, that's not very good for a frontrunner. I also look at the fact that if he continues to keep polling at this low level, he's not going to be able to bring in more funding. If he can't bring in more funding, it's a possibility that you might see Joe Biden drop out by Super Tuesday. I guess that's all I have on Biden. Let's see. I spoke about Bernie. Okay, Tom Steyer. Tom Steyer would have been my breakout winner of the night, though I am not a fan of Tom Steyer. Well, I won't say I'm not a fan of Tom Steyer. It's just he's not my preferred choice. I don't really have any problems with Tom Steyer. I did really enjoy when he brought up reparations. I know some in my audience might not support reparations or might want to go through all these different councils and all these other things. I see it the same way that Tom Steyer said it, and I've said it in other videos and in Medium articles which I've written. It is a debt that is owed to a community. Period. It's not about how much that's going to cost or this or that. It's a debt that's owed. I mean, I see it just as simple of if I started up a construction site. I brought a whole bunch of people here, and I tell you, at the end of this, I'm going to pay every one of you workers completely. I'm going to pay you guys, say, $10,000. Okay. I have 10 guys. I say 10,000 apiece. That's $100,000. Well, I don't pay them. A year goes by, 2 years go by, 3, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. How much money do I owe them at that point? That's the same way I look at this whole reparations issue. There's a certain thing as accrued and carried interest. And if you start out with 40 acres and a mule, okay, let's do the math. Somebody tell me how much that math is, and then that's how much the checks need to be written for. Any kind of other councils or any of the other stuff, I don't want to hear. So if any candidate who wants to move away from that and dance away from it and scared to say, yes, okay, well, but I don't know exact amounts or this and that, but yes, I do support it. If you can't even tell me you support it, I've lost my respect for you. You definitely lost my attention at that point. And I feel Yang, when going at it with Steyer, that's where he stepped in a little bit. He kept trying to use that UBI as a way to close the racial gap, or UBI is going to help with this, or UBI is going to help with that. You can have your UBI policy or freedom dividend, but you need to have actual solutions to issues that are brought up, especially when dealing with minority communities. And Yang got exploited by Steyer on that. And so I commend Steyer for the great job that he did. I do trust him on his push for all of his climate goals that he wants to do. But my issue is that with the Tom Steyer, you're only getting that one thing. Not going to get health care. Not getting student loan debt removed. We're not getting, affordable college. So with Steyer, you're getting that one thing. That's it. And if that's fine for some of you, I get it. Climate change is extremely important, and I do think that he's a serious candidate on that. But that's it. Outside of that, I mean, in the meantime, in between time, you still have people who need to pay the bills. People still need to eat. People still need to try to set aside a nest egg, try to save, put aside money so their kids can go to college. So if we don't get any of these other programs or strengthening in the social safety net, which Bernie's advocating for, then I feel a lot of the climate change things will fall on deaf ears to a lot of the population who are more struggling. Those people who are in that paycheck to paycheck $400 bill basically almost put you into bankruptcy. Those type of people, just screaming climate change is not going to be enough. Okay. Feel like I talked about all those not characters, but I've talked about all those candidates, and man, I see I'm going a little bit longer than I planned on going. So I'll try to wrap this up with a couple of my predictions down the road to expect. In New Hampshire, I figure I'll just throw out my predictions. I think Bernie's going to do better than expected. So with no surprise, I'm picking Bernie to win New Hampshire with 32%. I know that's a little, I'm shooting a little high, but I could be wrong. It could be a little bit lower. My second mind's telling me 28%, but we'll see. I think since Warren is right there at the neighboring state, and I feel a lot of women want to see, it's very important for them to see a female candidate. And if you're looking for a female candidate who has some good policy ideas, Elizabeth Warren could be your person. And I feel that she's going to capitalize on that. Also, with some of her relationships with the female senators in that state is going to help her. The same with Klobuchar. Though I'll give you her numbers also, but I don't see it nearly as high. I see Warren possibly pulling in 22% and coming in second place. I predict, though Pete has had a little bit of a rise, when the actual rubber meets the road, I think he's going to have a little bit of a slip. So I say Pete in third place with 18%. Klobuchar following with 11%. I think Biden is going to have that gut punch like he was talking about. And I see him roughly around 10%. Coming in, what would that be? Fifth place. Gabbard. She's put a lot of her eggs into New Hampshire and South Carolina, so I wasn't expecting much out of Iowa. I mean, so that said, we'll see if her I guess organizing her ground game pays off at all. I feel like she has a lot of outreach with independents and Republicans, and with it being an open primary, like I've said before, that could definitely help. A Gabbard and Yang also, like I've already mentioned, Bernie too. The anti-establishment candidates will do better in those kind of atmospheres. So I say Gabbard, she's going to have some rise, but I don't feel it's going to be nearly enough. I think she's going to be somewhere around 8%. And then I think Yang is probably going to get to about fifth. Not fifth, but 5%. That's what I predict for Yang. That said, if it does happen that way, which I'm predicting, it will roll on to that's going to definitely affect South Carolina. Mm-hmm. I know it's pretty early to start doing my predictions for South Carolina because they've been slow on some of the polling information, and they're just not polling enough. They're getting really, really stingy with the polls. So most of the polls we have are a little bit older that I've been going off of. So my predictions, and granted, this is before we have the South Carolina debate, which I feel once we have the South Carolina debate, that could change these numbers up or down, or I could just be completely way off. Never know. But I predict Biden to hold on to his lead in South Carolina with 26%. But I feel Bernie is going to be nipping at the heels right behind him at roughly 23%. Tom Steyer is the breakout surprise that I think that you guys are going to really need to watch out for. Tom Steyer, I could definitely see coming in third place there. My prediction is 17% for Tom Steyer. And then that's where I feel that Warren is going to run into issues. I feel she'll come in about fourth, and Gabbard, that's her last day where she's really pushed for. I think it'll get her to maybe 10%. But I don't see her having that massive surge or groundswell, which a lot of people out there have spoke about. I'll give you dropouts to expect and when I think you should expect these dropouts. These two candidates, expect them imminently. Granted, since New Hampshire is going to happen, no candidate is going to drop out before New Hampshire. So, well, unless it's Duval Patrick, which who knows when he'll drop out? Who cares? He's not going to make the stages or be relevant, in my opinion. I believe Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg, they're going to receive, I think they're going to receive some pretty devastating losses in New Hampshire, and I think that's going to be a wrap for them. Neither one has a pathway. Once you get into South Carolina, they're polling terribly in Nevada and in all the Super Tuesday states. So I see no viable path for those two after that time, and I think to save some face, you might as well just drop out before South Carolina. The next that I say two, possibly three will be dropping out after South Carolina. Andrew Yang is already kind of going down. He's been struggling. That last debate didn't go very well for him, even though it started out great. That punch in the gut from Steyer, I felt hurt him. And I feel he's already just not, I think he's just kind of met the max that he could reach. And the little engine that could, I think, is about done. Next, I'll be sad to see this candidate go because as far as foreign policy, I do agree with her on quite a bit. I think that after South Carolina, that will be the end of the road for Tulsi Gabbard. I don't see a pathway for her after that. It gets a lot more expensive as far as trying to campaign in all the various states and Super Tuesday and all that. And it doesn't make very much sense for her to stay after that. Joe Biden, I believe, after South Carolina, if Joe Biden doesn't do better than I predicted in New Hampshire and win South Carolina, I could see Joe Biden out before, or I can see Joe Biden out after South Carolina or Nevada. Right now, Joe's not bringing in a lot of money. And if you can't bring in money, you can't stay on the trail. So with Biden's on-hand cash, roughly around $8 million, like we've said before, that just doesn't give you a lot of leadway. And going into Super Tuesday, two of the big states you're going to have to try to go for, California and Texas, to try to, well, California media markets are literally one of the most expensive media markets in the country. So that's going to be tough already for him. The other part is Texas is a massive state. And so trying to get commercials to all the different areas is expensive also. So I just see that it's coming down to the end for those candidates. By Super Tuesday, I can definitely see it down to Bernie Sanders, Michael Bloomberg, Tom Steyer, and possibly Elizabeth Warren. That's all I have for you. I will try to drop a video sometime during the week after New Hampshire to see where we went wrong, see how close we were on some of these things, and give you, where I see the race going from there.